Hello everybody, welcome back to Alan Wall's Photography. I'm Alan, and this is the first in a 10-part series, The Basics of Lightroom. In this series of 10 videos, I am going to walk you through the Lightroom ecosystem in order to teach you how to edit your own photographs. I decided to do this series of videos because a lot of the people that I am teaching are still using JPEG as their file system with their cameras. They've got nice cameras that can do everything, but are recording their photographs as JPEGs. And I think that's very limiting in photography. Our cameras are able to capture a vast amount of information when we press the shutter release button. And when we have our camera set to JPEG, what it will do is it will essentially edit the photograph right there and then in the camera and throw away any of the information that it decides you don't need, and it will store the photograph in a fairly small file as a JPEG. The problem is that anytime you edit a JPEG, anytime you carry it into Lightroom and make some adjustments to color or exposure, it again throws away any information that you don't use in the new JPEG. So by the time you've opened a JPEG maybe twice in any editing program, you have a very degraded file, and the quality of the photograph suffers a great deal. So in my opinion, it is just as important to know how to edit raw files or raw images in your computer as part of your photographic workflow. I think it gives you much more versatility and much more flexibility and room to create the image that you had in your mind when you took the picture, rather than letting your camera's JPEG settings determine that. So that's what these 10 videos are about. And you may ask, well, why have I chosen Lightroom? There are a lot of other competing editing programs out there, and some of them are very, very good. But I like Adobe. I like working within that system. I think that the programs that I use on a regular basis, and by that I mean every single day, work great together. Lightroom, Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere Pro, Audition, InDesign, and half a dozen others. I use them all and they work well together. So I think that if you're just starting out, this will give you the biggest possible advantage going forward, is learning this particular platform. And there is another reason I recommend it too, and that is it's one of the few remaining bargains in photography. Adobe sells a subscription to Lightroom, which includes a subscription to Lightroom CC, which is their online platform for editing on the go and for keeping your photographs accessible when you're away from your home computer. But it also includes a fully featured, fully functional copy of Photoshop, which we're going to take a brief look at the end of this series, which by itself would be worth more than $10 a month, I assure you. And it also gives you, I think, 20 gigabytes of free storage in the cloud. So there are a lot of reasons that I chose Lightroom, and I'm sure if you stick it out to the end of this series of videos, you'll agree with me that it's probably the best place to start. In these 10 videos, we are going to address specific functions within the Lightroom ecosystem that you will use for editing every photograph. But we're not going to try to do it all in one video. That gets overwhelming quickly. There's a lot of information that we need to get through. So I'm going to split it up into bite-sized chunks and make sure that at the end of each chunk you know everything you need to know about that area of Lightroom to be able to go on to the next one. In the first video, we're just going to talk about installing Lightroom on your computer and opening it up for the first time. I'm going to show you around the screen you arrive on and explain what all the various parts are. And then I'm going to show you how to import your first batch of photographs into Lightroom. So that in the second video, where I'm going to be talking about workflow and organizing your library, it'll make sense. And then, by the way, our subsequent episodes are going to cover exposure and color and texture and correcting geometry and correcting lens errors, all kinds of things that are going to come in useful for you. So I think this is going to be fun. And the best way for us to do it is to just dive in. Go to the Adobe website. That's ADOBE. I'll put the link in the show notes. And when you get to their website, there will be a button somewhere on that first page that says Plans and Pricing. Just click on that button and you'll have an array of options that you can choose from to buy Adobe products. And what you want to look for is the photography plan. So all you have to do is press the buy button. It'll take you through the process of paying for your subscription. And it will give you a link to download the programs to your computer. And by the way, if you're running low on storage space, it might be a good idea for now to just download the Lightroom Classic instead of all the programs, because they're fairly big programs and they take up a fair amount of room. If you've got the room on your disk, by all means, put them all in there. But for the purposes of these 10 videos, you're not going to need more than the Lightroom Classic. And maybe for the last one, Photoshop as well. But once you have downloaded the program, it will give you instructions on your computer, whether you're a Windows person or a Mac person, to install the program, and that's your next step. When you open Lightroom for the first time, you are going to arrive here. Now, of course, when you arrive on your page, it isn't going to have my name on it. If it does, there's a problem. But this is the library module. It's one of 7 modules in Lightroom. We're going to be dealing with library for the first 2 videos, and then everything else will be dealing with the develop module, though we may touch on the print module briefly. We're not going to talk about the map, book, slideshow, or web, and that's not because they aren't interesting and have some useful features that you may at some point want to use. They're just not germane to the bare essentials of Lightroom, which is what we're going to be talking about, the editing part. So that's the top panel. On every Lightroom page, you also have a panel on the left and a panel on the right and a panel across the bottom. The one across the bottom is going to be a film strip. Whichever folder you happen to be in, all of the photographs in that folder will be displayed along the film strip. It's a great way to go to photographs that you're looking for and find them quickly. Of course, the middle panel is where the photographs themselves will be visualized. In Library module, there are several different views, including a page full of thumbnails, and that's what we're going to be looking at first. But of course, we don't have any photographs in there yet, so it's not displaying anything. In the Library module, the panel on the left is basically going to be your folder structure. It's going to be where all your files are. It's going to be something that you set up, so you're not relying on Lightroom's naming structure or folder structure. You're going to design that, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video. But for the time being, this is where your photographs will be, and you can organize them using several different systems. Now, I'll be saying this more as we go through the process, but there are many ways to accomplish the same thing in Lightroom. It's one of the things I love about it. You'll develop your own workflow and your own file system, and you won't have to follow anybody else's rules, but I'm going to show you how to use these different areas within the left panel to organize your pictures. Like I say, we can't do that now. We don't have any pictures in there, so we're going to do that first. If you go over to the right-hand panel in the library module, at the top of the page is your histogram. This quick develop is if you have a large number of photographs and you know for a fact that all of them are going to require one or more treatments exactly the same. In other words, a batch processing type of thing. For example, if you have 100 photographs in your library module that you've just imported from your camera, and you know for a fact you want all of these to be black and white, you can do a quick develop action in this right-hand panel to convert all the files to black and white. Keywording is another process that you can do up front. If, for example, if all of the photographs that you have sitting in whichever folder it is in your library, and they're all of a specific wedding on a specific day, you could apply your keywords at any point in the library so that you'd know that it was the Smith's wedding on January the 3rd or whatever. That wouldn't be a very good time to get married, would it? Or maybe it would, I'm not sure. I feel like I just insulted somebody who got married on January the 3rd. Didn't mean it. So applying the keywords, you can do this in the library at any time, and this is where you would do it. That's not the only place you can do it. And lastly, metadata. Metadata is something that we set it up and then we forget about it. Metadata is the data that goes along with your photograph. It's not visible in the photograph. But whenever you transfer a photograph or you post a photograph, the metadata can go with the photograph if you instruct the computer to do that. And we can decide exactly what data we have attached to our photographs. Every time I import a photograph into Lightroom, I apply my contact information and I apply my copyright information for that photograph. So that's one example of the additional data that can be attached to a photograph. And we'll talk about that more in the next video when we're going to be looking at workflow and setting up your files. But this is worth knowing. Let's go to the process of importing, because this is obviously the first thing we need to do. Now, importing happens in the library module. You can't do it from anywhere else. So that's why Lightroom opens in this module. But if you're working on some editing in the develop module and you decide to import some photographs, you just need to remember to go back to the library module to do the import. Now, I'm going to walk you through the import process. That's going to be the meat of this video. There are two ways that you can start the process. The first is to press the import button on the bottom left-hand side of the library module. The second way is simply to take your memory card from your camera, or for that matter, plug your camera in using its USB cable, and the computer and Lightroom will recognize that card and will open the dialog box so that you're ready to import. I'm going to trigger the import dialog simply by placing this XQD card. Now, in order to make this video clearer, I created a new catalog. A catalog is, think of it as the big basket where all of your photographs, all of your metadata, all of the editing information from all of your photographs is organized within a catalog. It's the largest organizational unit within Lightroom. So I created a new catalog, which I called the training catalog. We're only going to use this extra catalog today The next time we meet and I'm showing you how to set up your workflow will be in my main catalog so that you can start to see how to set up your files. But for this import video, I thought this would be easier. Once we get to the import dialog, which is now opened, we have to make 4 decisions. Well, more than that, but here's the basics of it. On the left-hand panel, we need to instruct Lightroom where to find the pictures that we want it to import. Now, Lightroom has correctly suspected I want to import the images on the card that I just put in, but that doesn't mean you have to import them from there. You can import images from anywhere on your computer or on your network just by picking the appropriate drive from the list that it gives you, and then from within that drive go to the location of any photographs that you may have that you want in Lightroom, and you can import them from there just as easily. But in this case, we're gonna do what Nikon has suggested, and we're gonna pick our import photographs from that card. Now we need to tell it how to import them, and for the time being, take my word for it, shoot in RAW. Always select copy as DNG. DNG is Lightroom's version of RAW. A RAW photograph is a file full of information. JPEG is a much smaller file that has already been processed by the camera, and the data that it didn't think it needed, it threw away. So if you are importing JPEGs to Lightroom, by the time you've gone in and edited them a couple of times and then resaved them, the files are getting pretty small and the pictures are getting pretty iffy as far as quality goes. With RAW, none of the data is thrown away. I could edit a picture today and totally change the exposure. Then I could go back 10 years from now and I would be able to put the exposure back where it was from the original film, because all the data is still in the file. Understand? I hope so. Shoot RAW and copy as DNG is the import instruction. If you just hit copy, it'll import the NEF files, NEF files, which is Nikon's RAW format, and you'd have to change them all to DNGs before you could edit them. So just copy as DNG. Don't do the move or the add choice. These will light up if you have JPEGs in your on your card. The problem is when it moves them, it removes them from your card. So if something bad happens during the import and you lose them from the import, they're not on your card anymore and you've lost them forever. So copy as DNG, it'll keep them on your card. Then you can take your card with the photo still on it, stick it back in your camera and format it to use again. That's what you should be doing anyway. You should never format your camera's memory card outside of the camera. All right, next thing we have to tell Lightroom is how do we want it to handle the files? How do we want it to name them? Are there any specific development instructions we want to give Lightroom? Any changes we want to make to all of the photographs? And most important, where do we want it to put the photographs? Because remember, Lightroom doesn't keep the photographs. Lightroom's catalog contains all of the information, but the actual photograph is stored outside of Lightroom, and we need to pick where that is. What I do is I have created a folder on my hard drive called Lightroom Images. All of my photographs go into that folder, and within that folder I have a file called To Be Filed, and when I import images into Lightroom, I put them all in this To Be Filed folder. The reason I do that is I cannot move a photograph from that file unless I've edited it. That's my rule. So once a file is edited, I remove it from the To Be Filed and stick it in its final destination folder. You'll see how this works in the next video when we actually start moving some stuff around. For the time being, I think the easiest way to learn is to just create one bucket to dump all of your imports into and then sort them out later. But that's my own preference. As far as things to do during the import, you have a lot of options. Leave the build previews on minimal. There are other options. For most stuff, it doesn't need to be a big file, so leave it on minimal. It'll import quicker that way. Building smart previews is something you'd want to do if you're going to try to edit photographs offline when you're not connected to your Lightroom photographs. In other words, I put my Lightroom photographs on an external hard drive. If I'm disconnected from that for any reason, if I take my laptop on a plane and I don't have that with me, if I have built smart previews, I can actually edit the smart previews offline. In other words, not connected to my Lightroom photographs folder. And when I reconnect, it will apply all those edits back to the original photograph. Leave it unchecked for right now because the smart previews take longer to create. Don't import suspected duplicates is a good idea if you're not good about formatting your card every time you do a download. I am very good about doing that, so I usually don't bother checking that. Make a second copy too is just an extra layer of security. You can send the pictures anywhere you want and they'll be backed up on that drive. So if something catastrophic happens with Lightroom, you've got the pictures safely tucked away in another location. Add to collection, we'll leave that alone for now. It'll come up in the next video, but collections are just another way that Lightroom organizes your photographs. It's kind of a way to automate your filing system. We're not going to get into it right now. File renaming, if you check this box, you have the option of renaming the files using a whole bunch of different formats, whatever you're most comfortable with. I leave that box unchecked, and the reason is I shoot with 4 or 5 different cameras. They all have a different naming convention, which you can set in the camera. You can change it. So my D850 creates a different named file than my D7500 will. So by leaving the numbers the same, my D850 is never going to renumber a photograph the same as a photograph I took yesterday. Once it's used the number, it moves on to the next number. So this way I know I'm never going to end up naming a photograph something that another photograph has already been named, because that will overwrite that other photograph and you can lose photographs that way. So I leave it to use the names, the file names that the camera chose for it. Apply during import. Virtually never do I do this. This allows you to take a single or a group of development settings, in other words, editing changes that you would make to a photograph, and apply whatever that is to all of the photographs that you're importing. It's just very few times that would be necessary for me. Say, for example, I shot 100 pictures and I'm going to do them all in black and white. I want them all converted to black and white images. Okay, that might be one exception to the rule where you could select from the drop-down menu black and white, and you tell it what kind of black and white you want, and then it'll apply that to all of the imported photographs. Rarely do I ever use it. I do apply my contact information and copyright information to every photograph that I import, just so I don't forget to do it later. And you can apply keywords if you want. Say you got 100 photographs on your card and they're all from the same wedding that happened on the same day. Yeah, fine. I put the couple's name and the date as keywords, and then you'll have an easy way to search for them later. And the most important part is, where do you want the photographs to go? Well, like I said, they're going to a location outside of Lightroom. So in the next video, I'll show you how to set up a file on your computer where all of your Lightroom images can go, and it will reflect the filing system that you use within Lightroom, so that Lightroom will always know where to find your photographs. For the purposes of this demonstration, I've just created an empty folder on my desktop because I'm only going to be importing a few photographs. So the last thing we need to do before we hit import is, what photographs do you want to import? Do you just select all? There's a button at the bottom, check all, which would select all of the photographs and then import them. Well, I don't, because I imported 300 of these things, the fireworks pictures, into another catalog. Lightroom doesn't know that, but I do, so I definitely don't want to import them. In fact, I only want to import 5 or 6 of these. So what I'm going to do is hit uncheck all. By the way, these thumbnails can change size. If you want a larger view of each image, you can change it using the slider on the bottom right. So I'm going to hit uncheck all and then check the ones that I do want to use. And I picked one that was overexposed, one that was underexposed, one that was wonky, and what else? Let's get that one. I'm trying to find the ones that have the editing changes that I want to show you. That was one of them. That was one of them. So what I'm doing is you could do this, and by the way, when you're going through your photographs to decide what you want to import, you don't have to do it in these little thumbnails. This is the thumbnail view, but there is also a button at the bottom. You can see it here, the square. This gives you the loop view. So for example, if I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to import that, I could hit the loop view and it will show me, that photograph and even allow me to zoom way in on it. All right, but we're gonna stick with this view for right now. I think that's how many have I got there? I've got enough. Let's just add this one and add this one. That'll be plenty for now. That should cover all of the things I want to demonstrate in the next video. So we've told it where to find the pictures, how to import them, where to put them, what to do with them during import, and we have specified the photographs that we want by putting a checkbox. Okay, now all we have to do is hit import. And Lightroom will import these into our otherwise completely empty filing system. Remember, we haven't put any other photographs in. This is the first set. So as Lightroom imports the NEF files, it will one by one convert the images from NEF files to DNG files, which we need in order to edit. So that's all we have for this video. In the next one, I'm going to show you how to build a file system and show you how to make sure that your photographs are correctly organized and stored on your computer, and talk a little bit about backups and that type of thing. And then in video number 3, we're going to get into what you really want to talk about, which is editing your photographs. So I hope this was useful. If it was, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other ones. I'll be back in just a few days, and we'll try to get these 10 videos out pretty promptly so that you can get some continuity as you learn how to use Lightroom. Until I see you in a few days, take care, have fun, and stay safe. Goodbye.